Okay, Dina, question of the day for you and our listeners. What do all of these have in common? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Vitamin C, vitamin E, beta carotene, selenium, manganese, flavonoids, polyphenols, anthocyanins, lutein, lycopene, resveratrol, coenzyme Q10, glutathione, lipoic acid, astaxanthin. Do I need to go on and on because I have to take breaths in between these? What do all of these have in common?
Well, I was going to initially say some of them are hard to pronounce, but that's not
Very
common
hard
for
to
all of them.
pronounce.
I would say they're all very powerful compounds of
Very
different
much so.
different nature, different structure. Like you mentioned, a
Yep.
few vitamins. I think I
Yep.
heard a few minerals in there, a few other
Yep.
like phytos.
Yeah.
But yes, powerful, shall I say, antioxidants.
Antioxidants, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. But interestingly, what you just said, I think, is very powerful too, because yes, there were some vitamins in there were some minerals in there were some phytochemicals, which are just plant compounds. So antioxidants, so it's anti-preventing oxidation, they can be found in a host of products, right? Or in a host of different foods and a host of different supplements and a host of different like the list goes on and on, right? I think it we are talking about antioxidants today, but I think I just want to open it up by saying you can find these in so many different places. I mean, everywhere from fruits and veggies to nuts. I mean, even dare I say red wine, right? So these, and that's not, of course, the flood, like don't open the floodgates to be like, oh, Bob said red wine, therefore, right? Please, listeners, that's not the point here. But antioxidants are in a lot of different places, and I feel like it's just time for us to talk about these because it seems like the story has changed significantly on antioxidants in the past, let's say 10, 20 years, but it's also now progressing very, I won't say quickly, but it is progressing. Like there's some new research being put out there. Really, I mean, back in the days, check, it was antioxidants like crazy. Whenever you get a chance, just shove them in your body, right? Doesn't matter how much or whatever. And nowadays, it's like, oh, wait a second, let's take a step back. Because I think probably as of everything that we talk about in the nutrition world, I mean, I hate to use this word, but moderation is actually very important. But I think context is even more important. So
Mhm.
when it comes to antioxidants, Dee, what are you hearing from the athletes that you're working with or the questions? Like, are they still having questions about antioxidants, or is it just kind of it's not much talked about anymore, kind of a thing of the past?
I still see it as a pretty common discussion point, Bob, and I think for those that pursue nutrition, guidance, coaching, and you ask like, what supplements do you take, or what's your routine? I often see a slew of antioxidants in the routine. Some of it is, I don't want to say hidden, but it's like, oh, I didn't realize, like in my multivitamin, I just take this every day. But it's still like looking, and some athletes just aren't aware, right? They're just trying to like protect, defend, keep immune system robust. And so I think sometimes it's like more is better. Like we need antioxidants, so we best get as much as we can. And then there's the other side, like, oh, I didn't realize, I'm just taking these couple, even like protein powders or these meal replacement powders that have been fortified. And so the antioxidant content is higher than what some realize. I don't think it's an issue or a topic that's like gone away. I think there is still confusion or some clarity that's needed. So I'm glad that we're
Yeah,
having this conversation.
I
What do you,
agree.
what do
And
you see?
well, I was just going to kind of play off of what you said a little bit because I think antioxidants are very important. Let's not, sugarcoat it. They are extremely important, but it is about context, it is about dosing, it is about timing. It's even about the stage of life that you're in, right? Which we'll kind of hit on here, but I think it's also important like nowadays I'm seeing more single-based antioxidant supplements, right? So I'm seeing resveratrol, coenzyme Q10, lipoic acid, astaxanthin, like all these things they were maybe around 20 years ago, but they were on the back of the shelves. It was like one product. But nowadays, I feel like we're all being consumed by these single products, right? So this is the point I want to make. We do have single product antioxidants, but we also have dual product and even multi product antioxidants where you might be, like you said, it's a quote unquote multivitamin that also has 10 different antioxidants or a proprietary blend of phytochemicals, right? So it has a list of these things. So you may actually be combining some multivitamins that are not technically an antioxidant with antioxidants, but then there's the hidden ones. And you mentioned this because I've been seeing this a lot in sport nutrition products, right? Where you think you're taking whatever, a recovery based protein powder or whatever. And all of a sudden, you look on the nutrition label and you're like, oh, wait a second. So there's actually phytochemicals in here too. Well, that's interesting, right? So I feel like we need to be a little careful also. And listeners, you're gonna really want to hear what we have to say as we progress this conversation, because there's definitely a time and a place. So I see this a lot, Dee, where maybe athletes are taking their recovery powder, shake, product, whatever it is, and it has a really high amount of antioxidants. And I'm not going to push the fast forward button, but that might not be a good thing based on timing, right? I feel like if you're taking, let's just say, resveratrol, and it's a single pill, capsule, whatever, and you see it, you're taking it because you can associate that. But if you're taking a recovery-based powder, you don't necessarily know, unless you actually look at the very fine print, if resveratrol is in there or not. So it's kind of tricky, right? And I think the point of this is, antioxidants are helpful in our body, but not all the time at higher doses and even lower doses, right? This is the tricky part. So maybe we launch into this because, like, when we're talking about oxidation in the body, we're really talking about these things that are called reactive oxygen species. And it sounds really crazy. It's the acronym is called ROS or ROS. So I think I might just reference ROS from now on. But basically, like oxygen inside our body, it actually binds with other molecules in our body. And when it binds, it forms these reactive oxygen species. So it's reacting to oxygen, right? These ROS molecules are extremely important because, and this is kind of where the newer research comes to play, it's kind of like Goldilocks, right? This one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one's just right. We need a little bit of ROS, but we don't need too much of ROS, right? And that's the tricky part these days, is the question is, well, how much do we need, right?
I know. And like we joke, we don't have a little sensor that we can just plop on our watch or whatever that's like, ooh, my current ROS level is.
Yes. That would be cool though, wouldn't it? Kind of like a CGM.
I know, idea. But I just wanted to re-emphasize something you said, like, or maybe put it in a couple different words, like ROS, reactive oxygen species. It's a very normal outcome of all the many cellular processes that are continually happening. But it is that like tipping point where more or unstable level of all of these molecules can be harmful in many different ways. But again, like we don't know what our level is exactly. Like that's not something you can just do a single blood test and get a measurement. But there are other ways we can kind of get to that point to get a sense. But it's a little more complex. I know that's not the topic of today's discussion.
Yeah. You kind of have to piece together the puzzle with that one, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But what's interesting too, what you said, and kind of playing off what you said, is our body has internal antioxidant methods too, right? To combat these high ROS times, right? So our body actually has the ability to produce antioxidants to try to keep everything in balance. So the question that we will answer later is, and maybe sooner than later, but is, well, are there certain times of life or training where I should be more focused on having more or less antioxidants, right? That's really the question. Like when it comes down to it, Dee, when I think of this, if you bring up this topic, I'm like, great, yes, we have reactive oxygen species going on pretty much all the time. Our body is pretty good at balancing those unless the scale is tipped, right? And that is kind of what we're talking about. And the scale can be tipped in a disease state, which we're not going to talk about today. We're going to talk mostly about, when does the scale tip? Is it training? Is it based on maybe developmental level or stage of life that you're in, right? Because we know some things change as we get older, right? So that's what I think is really super helpful for our listeners, is to determine, okay, when may be the time to have these antioxidants, right? But maybe before we push the pause button there, maybe before we go there, I think it's important to also maybe bring up that back in the days, again, check the box. Remember, we used to just put a whole bunch of antioxidants in that post-workout window, right? Because we thought that was beneficial to help the muscles. Well, recent research is actually maybe not that recent, but is kind of pointing to the maybe that's actually not such a good thing. And maybe, and I was reading a little bit because it's kind of influencing the mitochondria also, but it's also possibly not a good thing in terms of muscle repair. So now there's these little question marks that pop up and saying, oh, wait a second. So now we have to be weary of when we time our antioxidants, right? Because now we're talking about muscle recovery, muscle damage, and mitochondrial recovery. So I feel like there's a lot of things going on in this little talk here.
And do you want to clarify, Bob? Are we talking about supplementation through pills, powders, potions versus
Potions.
like what's in my granola or, my post
Yeah,
workout
absolutely. Yeah,
meal? Hmm.
that's a great. I think that's kind of where you're going is yeah, are we talking about food or supplements
Yeah.
basically, right? Because yeah, you can get a lot of these antioxidants through foods, right? Like I said earlier, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, I mean,
Yeah.
you name it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I pretty much almost all, at least a lot of plant-based foods will have a lot of antioxidants, right? And some
Hmm.
animal-based too. But yeah, that I'm not as much concerned with because it's really hard to eat like 10 pounds of strawberries or blueberries or I mean I'm sure it can be done and someone is going to take me up on that, right?
I know it's
But it's
challenging.
it's easier to say, oh well, one pill equals quote unquote one serving of, let's just use resveratrol again because I picked that up earlier. Well, I'm gonna, I had a tough workout. I'm gonna have two or three, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about because that can be kind of the danger zone, right? It's
Yeah.
not necessarily, in my perspective, it's not necessarily food-based antioxidants. It's the supplement-based antioxidants that we really have to keep a watch on.
Okay, Bob, that's helpful. And then I think to what you were saying earlier and applying it to supplementation, then for us athletes doing training, whether that's, and maybe there's something else to clarify, endurance focused or strength
Mm.
work, did I hear you say antioxidant use through supplementation could potentially compromise muscle function? And doesn't that seem counter to what we're looking for?
Oh, completely. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I was reading the science of this and I was like, "Oh, I need to take a break from this because there's a lot of biochemistry going on here."
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's basically looking at too many antioxidants from supplemental post workout, meaning more so strength training, can actually have a negative impact on muscle repair and muscle growth. So if you're lifting weights, even if it's functional, right, you want to be very careful in when you use antioxidant supplements, no matter what, but especially with weight training, because of the muscle. And you can even argue some types of endurance training if it's a little bit more stressful to the muscle, the skeletal muscle system, right? But that's a really it's an interesting thing. And listen, there's not a lot of randomized control studies on this yet in humans. They're still kind of coming out even in the animal model. So we can't point the finger on it yet. But it's interesting to talk about because there is some baseline data to discuss and say, maybe we do need to look at the timing, the window of supplementation a little bit closer. Because here's the thing, and this is where my brain goes too, D. Like when I'm in a heavy training phase, of course, after a session, be it weights or endurance or whatever, I'm thinking, how can I maximize my recovery? And then my brain says, oh, antioxidants, anti inflammatories, right? Protein, carbohydrate, like you go down the list.
Yeah.
But now I think we need to be a little more aware of antioxidants. If
Hmm.
listeners, if you're not already aware of this, maybe you heard of this before, but I doubt it because this is, I mean, it's not new, but it's newer because I feel like every time you go on any social media, what are we looking at in terms of antioxidants? Like it's in your face. It's, oh, have this greens powder, have the right. I mean, greens
Yeah.
powders are a huge culprit in over consuming antioxidants. And this is not a shot on greens powders. It's just more of a timing thing than anything else. Yeah.
Timing. And I think the other side too, maybe we'll embed through this discussion, Bob, is like, what is your genetic blueprint?
Oh
Because
yeah.
even when we've had Amanda Archibald on before talking about inflammation, oxidative stress, but the role of our gene blueprint.
Hmm.
And, that some of us are just genetically maybe more predisposed to be at higher risk for, I think I was going to use a double negative, like not able to stabilize those free radicals. And so we
Yeah.
have to use food and compounds within the food and the food choices that
Hmm.
we have to help ourselves. And like, I mean, the supplementation may cover some of that, but I mean, there's like the athlete side, the health side, the genetic side that's within that, and trying to, as teeter totter, like trying to balance it, even though that's not the best choice of words, but like, how
Yeah.
can we understand our own inherent or maybe the genetic predisposition?
Yeah.
Because some of us, again, may be at a higher risk for this level of oxidative
Yeah.
stress. We just have to get careful and strategic with working with this part of our systems, cellular
Yeah.
systems.
It's so interesting you bring that up because this literally just happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I did a genetic test on an athlete and it was part of a package that I have. And she was super interested. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Because, you and I have talked about genetic testing and how important it is. It's a one and done. It can really help us as dietitians really create a good nutrition plan that is catered to someone's genes and
Yeah.
their individuality. And it's funny you say that because she was super high, meaning it was very important for us to address antioxidants and anti-inflammation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with her, and a lot of the argument that people have said is like, oh, why do I have this? Why should I have this test? You're a performance dietitian. You're just going to tell me to eat more fruits and vegetables anyway, right? Well, perhaps, but we have to put it in context. If someone's super high with having a higher risk of these things in their body, sometimes food isn't going to cut it all the way, right? Especially based on their genetics and especially based on, like, in particular, this athlete I was working with, very low fruit, vegetable, and even like protein intake, right? Which is
Yeah.
not surprising. But, it was much more than saying, oh, just eat more fruits, vegetables, and proteins. It was like, wow, you're really like red light on antioxidants and anti-inflammatories here. I need to do a better job as your dietitian to really encourage the food. But part of that also was having a discussion about supplements because, as you know, sometimes there's a little bit of non-interest in eating those types of foods, or perhaps just food intolerances or food preferences. So I did have to bring up the supplement discussion also. But it's so fitting that you brought that up because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went through this 2 weeks ago with an
Yeah.
athlete, and it changed her whole outlook. Like, we spent 4 weeks doing this, and from 1 to 4 weeks, she was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I'm recovering better. I'm sleeping, like the whole shebang, right? And of course, it's not just about antioxidants, it's about improving everything. But I would just kind of second, we're not trying to sell genetic testing, but I would second getting the genetic test done because, I mean, literally it's a one and done test. How easy is that, right?
Yeah.
And it gives you so much more information here. And interestingly enough, one of the gene regulators that we always talk about is NRF2, right?
Mm-hmm.
NRF2. And ROS, reactive oxygen species, has as a relationship with this. So I think it's really important that you brought up the genes and the genetics in this because there is association in a lot of different pathways with antioxidants, but also reactive oxygen species. I know we're getting in the weeds, so we'll come out here, but it's important. Let's just
Yeah.
conclude it is important to look at genes also.
And I think one thing you made me think of, Bob, too, is like food being a tool to work
Hmm.
with ROS or inflammation, or we have free radicals in our bodies.
Yeah.
But also environmentally, what's going on that could make our ROS level out of control or showing up as like, oh, my potentially my risk for diseases, cancer, whatever,
Hmm.
higher. And so just not wanting to neglect like the air we breathe, chemicals we're
Yeah.
around. I mean, dishes that we use. I used to think all that was woo woo, like, oh, come on, it can't have that big of a role. But
Yeah.
obviously, the more we learn about chemicals and compounds in the things that touch our skin or we
Yeah.
breathe in, like that can have a serious impact. So, not to
Yeah. It's definitely
underplay,
not woo woo.
yeah, and
It's
not
not
to
woo woo.
underplay the role of food, but it's like, oh, there's so
No.
much that kind of our
Well,
bodies get
and
exposed to.
and even looking at like I bring that up quite a bit, the environment, right? So with athletes, it's like, where do you train, right? Are you
Yeah,
training on
yeah, yeah.
trails in Colorado that has, wonderful air, or even like nowadays, I mean, even Colorado, I don't know if you've heard, but there's, some wildfires in Canada, and the smoke is blowing down into the
Yeah.
States, right? So it's like, where are you training? What type of environment are you training in? Are you running in the city with a lot of carbon monoxide, a lot of pollution potentially? Are you running on high smog days, or you know what I mean? So I think, listen, we're not telling you to completely change your life, but just be aware of what are you doing outside when you're active, and then inside, to your point, what things are you using inside your home, from laundry detergents to dishes, like you said. I mean, it's very important. It's listen, it's tough to control all that. I think it's sometimes like you got to go 50-50, right? You're like, okay, I've got to work out today. My only option is I'm traveling, I'm in the city. I either do whatever treadmill bike in the hotel room, or I'm going to go outside. Like, you've got that choice, but it's like which,
Hmm.
like, what's the lesser of two evils almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good thing. It's not just all about food.
Do we want to come back then, Bob, to talking about, is this a yes or no, black and white kind of question? Like, can I, regardless of age, type of athlete, type of exercise I'm doing, can I supplement with antioxidants after my workout? Or should I? Is it a yes or
Yeah.
no?
It's interesting because I was trying to think what question you were going to ask. And had you asked, doesn't matter the athlete or the age or whatever, should I take antioxidants? I think that it was a little more gray area. It's like, oh, well, there's so many, it depends. But since you put in the whole post workout, right? I'm very black and white with this, extremely black and white. I am, I mean, as conservative as you can, I am very much a conservative when it comes to that, and I say hard pass on aggressive antioxidants in supplemental form, not
Hmm.
food form, after a workout. And I usually give it a few hours after a workout. That's my
Same.
thing. That's my message. But again, kind of back to your initial point, food, yeah, for sure. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's build some good food in there if you're hungry and all that stuff. But I think, and this is why I brought up the whole like protein powders, recovery powders, because they're hiding, right? We need to be
Hmm.
very careful with those athletes that, who are using those products afterwards and not using food. We just need to be careful that it doesn't have high amount of antioxidants.
I agree and practice the same way. Yeah. Within
Yeah,
that 2 hour window, I mean,
yeah,
food, okay. But
yeah,
doing the pills and other powders, let's check what's in them, and yeah, not wanting to purposefully supplement
yeah.
with any of those antioxidants, which, as you
But
mentioned in the very intro, it's not just
yeah,
vitamin C. There are
exactly,
so
right.
many. Yeah.
And
So,
listen, outside of that window, I think we should progress to that. Like, what
yeah.
about outside of the
Hmm.
post-exercise window? Then, yeah, I think it's definitely less black and white, because there's so many it depends. Like, do you need it? Like, what does your daily nutrition plan introduce in terms of antioxidants? How old are you? What's your training load, right? So there's so
Yeah.
many different things. And even from a behavior standpoint, like, I don't have a lot of my young athletes taking antioxidant supplements, because, the focus is more food and what can we do through food. It's not until we really dive into that. But listen, here's another thing. If we go on both the ends of the aging continuum, call it unfortunate or fortunate, as we age, we know there are some, let's just call it, challenges that we face that are different than when we're younger, right?
Yeah.
And one of those is micronutrient deficiencies, and the need for higher, or let's just say more, antioxidants as we age is definitely in the picture. However, there's still a timing thing, right? You still want to respect the post-workout thing, but that's I feel like working with masters athletes in antioxidants is one of the trickiest subgroups there is, to
Yeah.
be honest with you.
And this
Yeah,
is, yeah, where the black and white gets a little bit more gray
it
and,
does. I don't want to say you don't have to worry about antioxidants. I want to say you do have to worry about antioxidants in terms of consuming them both through food and supplements, but there's a time and a place for the supplements. And I think
mhm.
that's the context we put it in. Not necessarily from food as much, because listen, we know that most people are not eating enough, micronutrients anyway. So we really are like, listen, are you really going to overdose on strawberries or blueberries or whatever? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
But again, back to my previous point, you might overdose on the capsules that you take because it's easy to do 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, right? So
Right.
I feel like when it comes to different subgroups, I think it's really important to look at the nature of the developmental stage, meaning age, right? Biological age, not necessarily chronological age, but also, I would say training load. I do want to ask you about females and what you've seen in the research with this, if anything. But I think let me just before I set you up with that, with a training load, right? This is what I see from a lot of athletes. They say, "Oh, I'm training a lot. I'm in a huge build stage. I just need a ton more antioxidants." Maybe, but again, timing is king here, right? It's not about just shoving everything in your body post workout. I think we just need to be a little bit more strategic about that and build food around it, and also be smart with the antioxidant supplements, i.e., green powders or multivitamins, even, right? So being smart with maybe supplement timing when training load is high, I think is of paramount importance. Anything from the
Agreed.
female side? Like,
I think it's generally accepted, Bob, when women go through the perimenopause transition, looking at all of the pathways involved, estrogen levels, progesterone, so many pathways and such, like inflammation levels do increase. So again, it's kind of coming back to this is what's going on in this phase of life. How can we support that through food, sleep, these things? Maybe hormone therapy comes into the picture too, but it's definitely common and prevalent. And I think it is an essential to do is look at this way that we can support oxidative stress or this ROS level that we're talking about for women, especially in that mid to late 40s through 50s. But you definitely have to put the whole picture together. Like, we don't want to isolate and just be, kind of pigeonholed on one thing. But it's certainly more of an issue than, maybe when we're younger. So I think the hormone transition and like you're saying, on top of aging, kind of a double whammy, so to speak. So how can we use, I think of all those tools that we have in our toolbox to try and work with this stage of life. So I would say it's important, bottom line.
so I think what I hear us saying is it's not necessarily, we can't just blanketly say, hey, everybody should take an antioxidant supplement, no matter who you are, what age, what gender, what category, or life cycle you're in. I think, as we always say, this is so individual. And what I'd like our listeners to just remember and really get out of this is that, take a look at not only what you're eating, of course, but in reference to this specific episode, take a look at what supplements you're taking right now, from greens powders to multis to even if it's just single nutrient antioxidants, even vitamin C, right? Take a good look at these, because I have a point here in a second also. But you want to make sure that obviously timing is very important with these. But listen, I see a lot of athletes they're taking a greens powder D and a multivitamin, and I look at both of them. I'm like, so you're doubling up on these things now. The same ingredients. Sometimes you share those similar ingredients in these products. So I think just being smart consumers is saying, okay, not even why I'm taking it, but just look at the comparison of antioxidants in your different products. The second thing that I wanted to point out is, looking at how do I intro this? Greens powders specifically, right? We don't, and this could happen with multivitamins or multi-nutrient supplements too, but I'm picking on greens powders because they're known to do this. There is a laundry list of usually phytochemicals, plant compounds, antioxidants in these green powders. And a lot of times it's proprietary, right? There are some companies that are not doing that, so we can actually see the amounts. But here's my point. What if there's 15 to 20 antioxidants in this greens powder and you have no idea the quantities?
Yeah.
One, you don't know if you're just throwing your money away because maybe they're underdosing this. Two, maybe they're overdosing it. Three, maybe there are some interactions with different antioxidants that are actually causing harm in your body, right? So as a consumer, we need to really be aware of what we're putting in our body. But if you take a greens powder, please try to find one that does not have a proprietary blend so you can see the exact amount of every single antioxidant that is in there, because I wouldn't want you going overboard on anyone in particular without knowing it, of course, right? But without reasoning also. I think that's a really important message that I wanted to send.
Very important. and a
Yeah.
great to do for all of our listeners. Take a look at
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you just a fun question, Bob. Do you have a favorite food? This might be a little trick question because I know there's so many genes involved in
Oh,
the oxidative stress pathway and ways to like turn down the dial and turn up the other dial for like, oh,
mm.
good, we're stabilizing versus regulating and which pathway and such. But I wonder if you have like a favorite, you either for yourself or for some of your athletes, like favorite food to
Yeah.
work with the natural supply of antioxidants, whatever, if it's vitamin C or one of the many others that you
Yeah.
mentioned.
It's a tough question to ask a dietitian, isn't it?
Well, because there are like
Because we like so many.
300 options.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. But I'll be honest with you. To me, it's not about a particular food. It's actually, I put more emphasis. If you would have asked me this like 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, blueberries or
Blueberries.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But these days, what I'm really trying to emphasize more, because number one, it's easy once you get it into your schedule, and also it's non-caloric, and also it makes things taste so great. Herbs and spices.
Hmm.
That is my thing these days because it's
Yeah.
so easy, it's so quick, it's portable. Like, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
it actually enhances your food excitement a little bit more because of the taste changes that you can have involved with it. So
Yeah.
for me, it's not necessarily food, it's more incorporating herbs and spices, both in my own nutrition, but also with athletes and
And
figuring out, because that's kind of cool, isn't it? Because you're like, ooh, well, how do you use turmeric? How do you use ginger, right? And it's like it's this whole other area of nutrition that we haven't really explored before.
yeah, and it's definitely forgotten or just not known. Like, oh, wow, I never had a clue that this herb or,
Hmm.
ginger could have such a powerful effect on what we're
Exactly.
talking about. So, yeah, I think that is a great one to mention.
Yeah. As much as I can say mandate without meaning mandate, I mandate, or let's just say highly encourage all of my college athletes to have at least 5 spices, herbs and spices, in their cupboard when they live off campus. At least
Hmm.
5, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important for everyone. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you look at my spice cabinet and there's like, I don't even know. I should count someday. There's so many. And but the good thing is I think as you're younger, you start your journey, right? And
Hmm.
if you're working with URI and you're 40, 50, 60 years old and you're like, wow, I haven't used all the herbs and spices, guess what you're going to start using, because it's so, like, my point is it is so important. It is just like genetic testing. So such an important part of your life is to use these triggers to different genes, and they're so easy. I mean, oh my gosh, D, I can't even, I mean, I can't tell you when the last time I haven't used a spice or herb, because it's
Yeah.
so easy to put in anything. Like, I put it in smoothies. Like, seriously, I mean, cinnamon and
Hmm.
ginger are
Yeah.
my go-to ones in smoothies, and sometimes turmeric, right? So my point is herbs and spice. This is a long-winded answer to your question, but maybe some of our listeners are like, wow, they're really talking a lot about herbs and spices. Maybe I need to be more aware of those. And I would
Yes.
say, yes, absolutely.
Kind of an easy addition when you think
It
about
is,
it because
right?
there's so many
Yeah.
options, all kinds of
Yeah, yeah.
foods that take well, like you're saying, even
Yep.
smoothies. So
Yep.
that is one simple action item for everyone. I guess the second one to the first one you mentioned, Bob, like check all your supplements, your powders and
Hmm.
everything and see what's going on in those products and when you're taking them, and then
Yes.
hire your friendly sports dietitian for a consultation to figure out what's right for you.
Yeah. Well, and it does come down to that, right? And I mean, it is because we are all individuals, and how many times do we tinker with our nutrition, figuring things out? But here, I just had an idea regarding the herbs and spices, D. How about we put in our, we have our Patreon account, right? And listeners, if you've not heard yet, we have a patreon.com account, and it's a nice little community we have for all of us. You can communicate with us, and we can communicate with you. And we have different membership levels. So we have a free membership level. You can just come out, hang out with us, and learn some stuff, ask us questions. And then we have 2 paid membership levels, and that is really because we are a non-sponsored podcast, so we do not accept any money from any companies or anyone really, because we want to be non-biased. We want to talk about what we want to talk about. No, subliminal messages coming through. So we have these 2 paid accounts or paid memberships that are, I mean, a couple bucks a month, right? I mean, it's less than a cup of coffee that you pay for a cup of coffee a month. So that kind of helps us keep our podcast going, because there are some expenses on the back end. But my point is this, D, we can put together because I've done this before. I'm thinking in our gold membership, let's share with our gold memberships herbs and spice pairings with different foods. So I've had this question a ton. People are like, okay, I get you on the herbs and spices messages, but I just like, I'm not a cook. I'm not a culinary genius, of which you don't need to be. You just use your taste buds. But I feel like that's a huge obstacle for a lot of people, is like the unknown. Like, I don't know how do I use rosemary? I don't know what to put rosemary in. So
Yeah.
let's commit to giving our gold members this kind of cheat sheet, if you will, of pairing some herbs and spices with different foods, just to make it easier on them.
That
Does that
sounds
sound good?
great.
Okay, so
Yes.
we'll do that. And again, everyone, you can go over to patreon.com/ISN podcast, and you can, again, join our free community. That's a great access to us. But also, if you want to help support us a little bit and get some really cool things on the back end, like this herb and spice document that I was talking about, in addition to a whole bunch of other things that Dina and I do for our silver and gold members, head on over there. But yeah, that's just kind of a reminder to head on over there and interact with us, because really we're trying to engage in all of our community and with everyone here listening, and this is the easiest way for us to do that. Okay, what else do we need to know about antioxidants, D? I mean, I feel like we've talked about a lot. I feel like those are all the questions I usually get from athletes, which we addressed. I mean, are there
Yeah.
any others?
I can't think of any, but we can invite our listeners to also drop a question to us through our email, hello@Inside Sports Nutrition, or join that Patreon community that Bob was just mentioning and plop the question there. And we want to hear what's on your mind regarding this topic. So that's an invitation to you all. So
Perfecto.
yes, I think for now, Bob, we are good on this topic.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Oh, by the way, did you know that we do have a YouTube channel too? So we are, all of our podcasts now are live. You can see us, being silly on video. Certainly you can listen to our podcast anywhere you listen to them, but check out our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, because it's kind of fun sometimes to watch what's going on. And if you've never met Dina and I, just to kind of see who we are. But yeah, check out our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching/listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.